Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Syamasundar Shri Radhe. Jai Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Jaya Shri Gauranga Jaya Shri Gauranga Jaya Shri Gauranga Jaya Shri Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
monk, and a well-known speaker who bridges the seeming gap between science and spirituality through his thought-provoking discussions and books. He has been a spiritual teacher for nearly 25 years in the Bhakti Yoga tradition through its modern-day expression, ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. An author of over 25 books that explains the relevance of Vedic wisdom texts, including the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana, Chaitanya Charan also writes the only daily blog on Bhagavad Gita, GitaDaily.com, where he has written some 4,000 articles on the Gita. He is an invited speaker at TEDx, World Peace Conference, UNESCO, Intel, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Massachusetts, and Cambridge. Overall, he gives approximately 400 talks across 100 cities in 4 continents every year. Please give a warm welcome to His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu.
Can you have it from the other side? I'm going to write. I'm going to talk on the topic of humility, and we'll see how this verse also talks about humility. But Machitta, Krishna says that their consciousness is absorbed in me. Am I audible clearly, or is there an echo? Clear? Maybe a slight decrease in volume. Slight decrease. Yeah, little decrease. So you can avoid the echo. So Machitta, Krishna says that their consciousness is absorbed in me. Then Madgata Prana, their life is devoted to me. Is it better? Still I feel it's good, but it could be better. You are able to hear clearly behind? Okay, no problem. Or slight problem. There is an echo, yeah. So, Machitta Madgata Prana. So, Krishna is talking about the mental activity, they're absorbed in me. The physical activity, their life is devoted to me. And then the social activity. What they do is, Bodhayantaha Parasparam. Bodha means understanding. Bodhayantaha means to give understanding or to share understanding. Bodha can also refer to enlightenment. So, Bodhayantaha Parasparam. They enlighten each other. Bodhayantaha Parasparam. And this is not in the mood of one person being superior and the other person being inferior. This is more of exchanging relation. Kathayantascha. In this way they describe about me. They talk about me. Kathayantascha mam nityam. Always. So this process is something which they do constantly. Kathayantascha mam nityam. And why do they want to do it constantly, nityam? It is because tushyanti. Because they get joy, satisfaction in it. Now if you consider degree of satisfaction, tushyanti is, like I'm satisfied, we had nice food, we say I'm satisfied. But when you're like extremely delicious food, and we don't say I'm just satisfied, I'm delighted. So it's ramanti. It's much higher. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Machitta madgata prana. Bodhayantaha parasparam. Kathayantascha mam nityam. Tushyanti Charamanti Cha. Macchitta Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Kathayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanti Charamanti Cha. One last time, let's recite together now. Macchitta Madgata Prana Bodhayantah Parasparam Kathayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanti Charamanti Cha. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today. I am thrilled to be here in this magnificent new temple and at the lotus feet of their lordships. And I'll be discussing on the topic broadly of humility. And I'll be using this as a whiteboard, some blackboard, and we'll be discussing humility in 4 different aspects. But there's one key theme which will be underlying the entire discussion. The topic of this seminar is humble forward. So normally, if we consider humility, normally what would we consider it to be its opposite? Yeah, we could call it arrogance, ego, pride. The opposite of humility, normally we consider it to be ego. And yes, that is true, no doubt. I saw one poster where one person had written, "My humility is my greatest quality." If somebody is proud of their humility, they already lost their humility, isn't it? So we could have, now sometimes people think that if I'm humble, others will walk over me. If I'm humble, people will disrespect me. If I'm humble, even I may start disrespecting myself. So people often equate humility with inferiority. So while this is valid, this is undoubtedly correct, but we could look, if you look at the way the Bhakti tradition and general spiritual traditions describe humility, we could present it in a more completely as a pendulum. The one side of the pendulum is ego. The other side of the pendulum is actually not humility. It is insecurity. It is inferiority. And in between the two, the balanced state of the pendulum is actually, the balanced state of the pendulum is humility. So ego means, we could say that For example, I know everything. I can do everything. That is ego. Insecurity would be, I know nothing. I know everything, and if we can take it further, I am everything. Ishvaro aham bhogi. Think that is ego. But the opposite is, I know nothing and I am nothing. Now this idea, I know nothing, I am nothing, that can lead to a feeling of worthlessness, a feeling of insecurity, inferiority, and total disempowerment. But humility in between is, I know something, I am something. Now, I am something means, in one sense, Mamaivamsho Jiva Loke. We are parts of Krishna. So, I know everything, that means I am God. I am nothing, so we could say, I know everything is a form of Mayavad. I'm simplifying this over here, but it's Mayavad. But I am nothing is actually Shunyavad. It's almost like I don't exist only. I have no worth, I have no existence. Yeah, some of you may want to come here because otherwise you may not be able to see from there. If you want to get the chairs here also, you can move the other chairs are here, you can take them. So, actually, I know something and I am something. This is bhakti. So, our entire discussion over the 4 sessions will be based on this broad understanding that we want to find this balance, this healthy state between insecurity, inferiority, self-pity, and as contrasted at the ego. Generally speaking, we may just look on one side of it. We say, I don't want to be proud. And we told that we should avoid pride, which is definitely true. We want to avoid pride. But how do we go about doing that? That is something which has to be carefully understood. So I will talk about humility in 4 sessions. This understanding of humility can permeate all areas of our life. So we look at humility in the domain of personal growth, our understanding of things, our understanding of values. So this humility in the domain of personal growth is actually curiosity. And this is what we are going to discuss today. Then we'll have humility in the domain of relationships. That we'll be discussing in our 2nd session today evening. And this is maturity. We'll see whether we discuss this today or tomorrow evening, but broadly we'll discuss these 4 things. Then in life, we all want to improve, we all want to learn more, we want to become better. That happens through humility manifests as curiosity. We deal with different people. Now, when we deal with different people, there also we need humility. That is maturity. Then in life, we also face problems. So, humility in problem solving, that is actually resiliency. Resilience and resiliency are synonyms. It basically, if we are humble when we are facing problems, we will be able to bounce back. We will be knocked down, but we will be able to bounce back. If we lack humility, then we are knocked down, we'll just be brittle and we will crumble. And humility in bhakti, in our relationship with the Lord, the Prabhupada uses the word, a devotee is malleable. So this is malleability. So we'll look at humility in these 4 distinct ways. So humility as curiosity, humility as maturity, humility as resiliency, and humility as malleability. So these will be our 4 sessions over the next 2 days. Today evening, tomorrow evening, So today, not morning, evening, tomorrow morning, evening. And throughout this, if anytime any of you have questions, just put aside your humility and ask questions. So, yeah, you can ask, and feel free to ask questions anytime. And I'll feel free to not answer questions also. If the question is not immediately relevant, or if the question is going to be answered a little later, I may not answer answer at that time itself, or I answer later. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
I've often thought of and have explained from this point that consider like examples such as Indra.
How?
Indra,
yeah.
when he was interacting with Prithu Maharaj, because of his pride of his position as a king of the demigods, simultaneously, because of that pride, he was also feeling insecure, and therefore he did what he did with Prithu Maharaj, with the horses and such. So it seems to me that ego and insecurity actually go together. So could you comment on that?
Okay, good point. Do ego and insecurity go together? Yes, it's like some people have this manic depressive symptoms. So when they have manic depressive, sometimes they are hyperactive. They seem to have energy which will just put everybody else with them parallel, leave everybody far behind. But then they go into the depressive mode. They are like, they don't even want to get out of bed. So what is happening is, it's the same thing. Like Prabhupada talks about bhoga and tyaga. Sometimes we may indulge with great force, and then when we feel, hey, this is not satisfying me, just renounce with great force. But again we come back. So yes, a pendulum would mean, that's why it's drawn as a pendulum. That the person is outside, they're having a lot of ego, and when their ego is shattered, they go to the other side. And they go into insecurity, and then again they may come back to ego. Now, in one sense, you could say, the way you are putting it is, if you consider this is the coin. Now, one side of the coin is ego, the other side of the coin is insecurity, inferiority, whatever you want to say. Now, the coin itself, the coin is the coin of self-absorption. Or we could, generally we use the word absorption in a slightly positive sense. Let's use a slightly different word. We could say self-obsession. So the person is obsessed with oneself. Oh, how great I am. I am so good, I am so great, I am so great. But it says, oh, I am worthless. I can't do this, I can't do that. I don't have this ability, I don't have it. Well, still in both cases, the I is very prominent. And that as long as the I is very prominent, that is where the person cannot do anything worthwhile. This was like if we have to give a talk. Now, the speaker is very diffident. Speaker speaks in a very timid voice, doesn't take any clear positions. When the question is answered, question is asked, they keep waffling. And that kind of not timidity to the point of being docile and indecisive, that will be alienating. They'll not be able to function properly. If the only thought the speaker has is, oh, nobody should be displeased with me. I should not be displeasing anyone by the talk. Well, no. Sometimes the message of the Lord itself is, it may shake some people, some conceptions. At that time, we can't be so intimidated by that. But on the other hand, sometimes if speakers, they are so full of themselves, that their purpose is not so much to enlighten the audience as to demonstrate to the audience how ignorant they are. At the end of it, we don't feel inspired to learn more. At the end of it, we feel insecure, oh, I know nothing. Now, if that happens, that's not very healthy. Yes, we all should feel there is a lot more to learn. But it shouldn't be at the cost of me feeling completely de-energized. So either way, if the speaker is too self-obsessed, then the speaker cannot do the service properly. The speaker's focus should be on, okay, I have to share this message. Yeah, I have certain limitations, I have certain strengths, I have that awareness, but the message is much more important than me. So I was planning to speak this later, but since you brought this point up, the humility, it is not about devaluing ourselves. That is not the essence of humility. It is valuing something bigger than ourselves. Valuing something bigger than ourselves. This is the essence of humility. Yes, as a speaker, I may have some limitations, but the message I'm speaking is very important. And that is far more important than my strengths or my weaknesses. So when we can be devaluing ourselves, or we can be overvaluing ourselves. Both could be a problem. Generally, if somebody is overvaluing themselves, we don't think of that as humility. That is ego. Now that overvaluing and devaluing, both can keep happening. Because when we overvalue, the reality does not really care for our valuation of ourselves. Isn't it? So I may think I can lift a 200 kg weight. But if I try to lift it, somebody else have to come and lift me after that. So when we overvalue ourselves and then we encounter reality, we'll go to the other extreme of devaluing ourselves. I can do nothing. And then especially if we don't want others to know about it, that is the time when we will again try to put on a facade. So yes, the two are two sides of the same coin of self-obsession. Okay, thank you. Important question. So I was planning to speak in this session on humility in the domain of personal growth. And we'll start with, I discussed this particular verse. I discussed 10.9. So 10.8 to 11, these four verses are special in some way. Does anyone know what is special about these verses? Yes, this is the Chatur Shloki Gita. Now, if we consider this particular verse, 10.9, what is it saying? That great devotees, they delight in discussing about me, kathayantascha. But it is, if we consider devotees, great devotees, as I mentioned in the verse, it talks about three things. It talks about their mind, it is absorbed in Krishna. Machittaha. In fact, the Prabhupada translates this, not that their minds are fixed on me. He says their minds, their thoughts dwell in me. That means it has become, Krishna has become the natural home for their thoughts. So the mind is absorbed. Our mind, physically we may go to 100 places, we go to job, our job involves traveling, we go here, we go there. But when we have nowhere to go, we come back home. So like that, a devotee may think of many things, but at the end of it, the devotee comes back to Krishna. That is the mind. Then the body, bodhaya, machitta madgata prana. It is dedicated to Krishna. The whole life is dedicated to Krishna. Here, it is absorbed in Krishna is in terms of remembrance. Dedicated to Krishna is in terms of service. And then he says, in terms of their you could say social interactions, that they are immersed in discussing about Krishna, or rather, they're delighted. They delight in discussing Krishna. Kathayantascha mam nishtha. Not just, it's constantly. Now when they're talking about this, it's interesting, the word used is kathayanta, but before that, the word also used is bodhayantaha. Now bodhayantaha means enlightening each other. In discussing Krishna constantly, in enlightening each other about Krishna. Now this word is especially significant because if we consider the previous verse, this 10.9 is using the word bodhayantaha, that they enlighten. Is this visible to everyone from behind? Again, if it's not visible, don't be humble. Tell me. Okay. But the key is the previous verse has used the word Buddha. Aham sarvasya prabho mattah sarvam pravatate iti matva bhajante mam Buddha bhava samanvitaha. Now Buddha is cognate to Buddha. It is similar to Buddha, and Buddha means the enlightened one. So Buddha are the people who are enlightened. Now essentially then what is this verse saying? The enlightened delight in enlightening each other. Now what does that mean? Aren't they already enlightened? If they are, now you could say enlightened, delight in discussing, that's different. But Krishna specifically uses the word enlighten each other. The enlightened and delight in enlightening each other. So how do we understand this? We consider Krishna is unlimited. And each one of us, say, I approach Krishna from here. And say, you approach Krishna from here. Now, because we are all finite and Krishna is infinite, so therefore, we all appreciate Krishna from different perspectives. And therefore, my experience of Krishna will be different from your experience of Krishna. And so, both of these may be enlightened people. This is enlightened person, and this is also an enlightened person. And yet, both of them can discuss, and both of them can enlighten each other. Because they are all appreciating Krishna from different perspectives. And that's why Prabhupada says in the purport, because Krishna is unlimited, a devotee who is Krishna conscious can keep unlimitedly knowing Krishna. And therefore, a person who is Krishna conscious will eternally keep becoming Krishna conscious. So in that sense, in the Bhakti tradition, enlightenment. Nowadays, spirituality is, especially in the mainstream world, spirituality is often associated with things which are hazy and fuzzy, whatever feels good. One common quote in spiritual, in you could say, common spiritual circles is, enlightenment is like a journey without a destination. Or people have these quotes which sound very impressive, but they don't really make much sense. God is a circle whose circumference extends everywhere, but whose center is nowhere. Okay, what does this mean? People who hear it, they think, oh, it sounds very profound. But actually, when the meaning of something cannot be found, people think it is profound. So the idea that enlightenment is just a journey without a destination. Now that is not true. However, enlightenment in the Bhakti tradition is both a destination and a journey. So the destination is that we understand Krishna is the ultimate object of love. We are loving so many different objects in this world. We may love wealth, we may love our looks, we may love our reputation, but none of these can give lasting satisfaction. So to be enlightened means to understand that Krishna is the ultimate object of love. Bhajanti ananya manaso. Anya, whatever we have, we always want something anya. But ananya manaso means, okay, I don't want anything apart from Krishna. This is enlightenment. And this sense of enlightenment is talked about in 10.8. But then enlightenment is also a journey because Krishna is unlimitedly lovable. He's the object of love, but the qualities in him that can attract our love, they are unlimited. And in that sense, we keep knowing more and more about Krishna. So enlightenment is both a destination and a journey. So the destination aspect is talked about in 10.8, and the journey aspect is talked about in 10.9. And that's why Buddha do bodhayantaha. They're Buddha because they've understood that iti matva bhajante mam, that we should be offering our heart and life to Krishna. But they are also bodhayantaha because they understand Krishna is unlimited. I know Krishna in one way. I want to know how you know Krishna. And I can learn from you. In this way, we grow. So we may say our topic is humility. How is all this discussion related with that? That's what we'll come to now. See, in general, in life, there are things we know. And there are things we don't know. So humility means to consider that the things that I don't know may be more important than the things that I know. So in that sense, like somebody is a botanist. They love botany. They love to know about plants. And okay, this plant has this variant, this plant gives this kind of flower, this plant needs this kind of nutrients. And they love it, they know a lot about it. And although they know a lot about it, if they go to a new forest, they're fascinated. Hey, which is this plant? I don't think I've seen this. Their eagerness to know more does not come from an insecurity about what they know. They know and they want to know more. So what I know is valuable, but what I don't know may be even more valuable. So in that sense, humility is curiosity. Curiosity. Okay, I know some things and I want to know more things. So these saintly people, this athato brahma jigyasa, at one level, it is the beginning of the spiritual search, brahma jigyasa. But it is not just the beginning, it is also the conclusion of the spiritual search. At the level of conclusion, we want to know what is Brahman. And then Brahman we understand, is it impersonal, is it personal, what is the particular nature of divinity. But at the end of that, still Brahma Jigyasa is there. But that Brahma Jigyasa is that Brahma is Krishna. How wonderful is Krishna? How lovable is Krishna? So that Jigyasa is the same as curiosity. So if we consider humility from this perspective, this is a spiritual journey. So we have Brahma Jigyasa. That is right at the beginning. Start with Brahma Jigyasa. But essentially, this goes on throughout that journey. The Arjuna himself will exhibit this. Arjuna, after hearing Krishna's words over here, will say that Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. You are the supreme reality. Sarvam etadritam manya. I accept what you are saying completely. In 10, 12, 13, 14, he talks about it. But then after that he says that, please tell me more about your glories. He says, Vistarena Atmano Yogam Vibhutim Cha Janardana. Please tell in detail what are your glories. Bhuya kathaya truptire shrunvato nasti me amritam. I am never satisfied. I want to know more and more about you. So we could say here, this Brahma Jigyasa, it culminates in Krishna Jigyasa. We want to know more and more about Krishna. So great devotees are humble, and their humility is actually a power for them. That it is, they know and they want to know more. And in that way, if you consider humility to be non-different in one sense from curiosity, then if I don't know, okay, there's nothing to be embarrassed about it. Okay, there's some things I don't know. I want to learn more about it. I'm open to learning. So this way, I said humility in the middle, when we consider it, this understanding of humility actually gives us power. It empowers us. When our relationship with ourselves is in terms of the ego, then we are disempowered in different ways. So humble power, humility as curiosity gives us power. I can keep learning. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, he first came to Butler, Pennsylvania, and he stayed at the house of Sally and Gopal Agarwal. So Gopal Agarwal's father had asked his son to sponsor Prabhupada's visit. Now, if we look at Sally Agarwal's description of her interactions with Srila Prabhupada, it's fascinating. She says, Swamiji was very interested in everything American. He wanted to know how the vacuum cleaner worked, how the washing machine worked, how the transport system worked. Everything. Now, did Prabhupada come to America to learn how the washing machine worked? No, not at all. Prabhupada came to actually share Krishna Bhakti. But he wanted to learn how the American mind works. How do these people think? How do these people live? Oh, and when he learned that, then he was able to communicate more effectively. So we may have spiritual knowledge and we want to share spiritual knowledge. It's good. But even when we are in the position of a teacher needs to know about the students. And the more the teacher understands about the students, then the teacher can give the knowledge in a way that can be intelligible, that can be appealing to the students. So in general, again going to the same point, there is something which is familiar to us. If you consider knowledge, it is familiar, and there is something which is much that is unfamiliar. So whenever if there is to be effective education, if a speaker has to communicate in a way that will be effective, then what is needed is, essentially, it means build a bridge. Effective education centers on building a bridge from what is familiar to what is unfamiliar. If the teacher only gives what is familiar, then it will become boring. I already know this. What is the point of speaking about this? But the teacher gives only what is familiar, it will become more boring. The teacher gives only what is unfamiliar, it will become overwhelming. It's every single point that we hear is something which you have never heard before. And we'll start thinking, hey, what is going on? It has become too much for us to process. So knowledge has to take us from what is familiar toward what is unfamiliar. From what we know toward what we don't know. And now, a teacher may be very expert in terms of many of the things that the students don't know. But the teacher has to know from where should I start this bridge. If the teacher starts the bridge, say, the bridge is only going from here till here. And then the audience has to do a high jump to catch the bridge and come up. That's not going to work. So, even for a speaker, the speaker needs to have humility to understand where the audience is at. I used to suffer from this quite a bit. That since my childhood, I like to read a lot, study a lot, understand a lot. And then I would speak. And I would speak what I am enjoying. But what would happen is that I would be speaking, I would be thinking that what I'm speaking is profound, but it would only confound the audience. And finally, one devotee told me, he said, "प्रभु आपका क्लास सुनना मतलब दिमाग से धुआं आता है." Smoke starts coming from the head. I can get overwhelmed. So actually, I wish somebody had told this to me much earlier. But anyway, so since then I started using PowerPoint, then I started using this. So when I'm doing this, things are a little slower. If the concepts are visually drawn, then it becomes a little easier to understand what is going on. So we have to know where the audience is. And when we understand where the audience is, from there we can take a step forward. We can move ahead from there. So I had asked one of my spiritual teachers that people say that I'm very intellectual, but I can't change myself. He said, you don't have to change yourself. Just increase your concern for your audience. So let's understand where they are. So when I read about, when with all these thoughts going in my mind, when I read about, I've read Lilamrut many times, but I read that section again. Prabhupada was so eager to learn about everything Western. That struck me very much. In that sense, humility is curiosity. Even when we are teaching something, we're also learning something at that. And learning not just about the subject, but learning also about the audience. Learning what connects with the audience, what doesn't connect with the audience. So, this is something which we will be talking about, especially when we talk about relationships. Because often when there are conflicts, we think I know something and we think the other person knows nothing. I am right and the other person is wrong. So each session will be centered on one particular understanding of humility, and we will be building on it sequentially. But right now let's focus on personal growth. So in terms of knowledge, yes, I know some things and I value what I know. We all know some amount of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and that is one part of what is inspiring us to practice bhakti. So we don't devalue what we know. But there is so much more to know. And we value that. That's what inspires us to attend sessions. That's what inspires us to study books. That's what inspires us to learn and grow. Now this curiosity, it is not only about subjects. I'll talk one more point and then we can have further questions. So humility in the form of, so the theme which we're discussing is humility is curiosity. So curiosity means there is what I don't know and I want to know it. So for this purpose, what do we need? See, for example, we sometimes try to discipline ourselves. Say, okay, I will wake up at this particular time in the morning. And then we set an alarm, and sometimes the alarm wakes everyone around us up. But it just doesn't wake us up. So, and we may start saying, oh, I am lazy. Or sometimes, say, we decide that I won't yell at anyone. I won't raise my voice against anyone. And then we get angry. And we get angry, and then we say, oh, I'm short-tempered. Okay, that may be a functional description, and that's fair enough. But, so if I get into rage, and the explanation I give is, I am short-tempered. So now this is like saying, suppose somebody, there's a plane. And the plane, there is a plane crash. So I'm saying the rage, the cause of the rage is I'm short-tempered. If there's a plane crash, and there's after that the government orders an inquiry. What caused the plane crash? And then we are inquiring, and they do an inquiry, and after that they give a report. And they say the plane crashed because of gravity. now, if they say plane crash because of gravity, is that a correct explanation? Well, you could say, yeah. You could say without gravity, the plane wouldn't crash. But it may be correct, but it is not the relevant explanation. Because planes are designed to fly in spite of gravity. So when they crash, we want to know what caused the mechanism to malfunction at that time. So similarly, if I say, I flew into a rage because I'm short-tempered. Well, if that were the only reason, then we should always be flying into rage. Isn't it? But nobody stays enraged all the time. You cannot. And anger is a very expensive emotion. It takes a lot of toll on our body, our mind. So nobody is constantly angry. So if I got angry, if there's an episode of rage, then saying something, I'm short-tempered, that doesn't explain anything. It only explains away. Okay, what exactly happened? Is it that something had happened in the past? Maybe 10 small things had gone wrong in that day. And this thing which went wrong, the 11th thing was like the straw that broke the back of the camel. You know that saying, normally a straw will not break, a straw is tiny weight. It's not even noticeable. But the camel has already been burdened. And then one straw, falls. So from the external perspective, somebody did some small question they asked and the person exploded. So, if we consider, say this is the way I'm normally functioning, but what happened is that I was like this. One thing went wrong, second thing went wrong, third thing, fourth thing, seventh thing, eighth thing, ninth thing, and then this came back. I just collapsed. So, if that's what happened, if I look at it, okay, what did I get angry? I was already stressed out, I was already exhausted. Okay, then we learn something. That means that if I'm already provoked, I'm already drained, then maybe I should not get into situations that are likely to provoke me further. Suppose, there are some people, I was once doing a mediation, and this person, the first person was trying to be a little reconciliatory. He said, I can see that you're very angry with me. So can you tell me what have I done that has made you so angry? The second person said, you exist. Now, the second person was not actually saying it in an arrogant way. It's not in a disrespectful way. He says, just the way your eyes move when you smile, the sound of your laughter, the sound of your voice, the way you walk, everything about you annoys me. He was being candid, but the point is, if now, unfortunately, we may all have some people, they may not do anything, but they're doing nothing itself angers us. So if we know there are some people like that in our life, then maybe if you're already a little fragile, if you're a little exhausted, then don't have a dealing with that person at that time. You can always maybe have the meeting next day or do something else. So we learn something about ourselves. So what happens is, humility, so I'm talking about humility in personal growth. So one extreme is that I say, I did nothing wrong. That would be ego. So every time, whenever any problem comes up, that I was at one place, and there the leader, there's a small community, the leader so used to get angry with everyone and yell at everyone. And then all the devotees were were feeling very fearful and very hurt. And the leader was quite friendly with me. So I started talking with him. He said that when you yell at people, then people get very hurt. People feel very afraid of you. Yes, if they just did what I told them to do, I wouldn't have to yell at them. So they should just start doing what I'm telling them to do. So here there is a refusal to acknowledge any problem on their part. This would be ego. But the other extreme could be, I am not just wrong in that I did wrong, but I am only a bad person. I am wrong in the sense that I am worthless. This would be insecurity. This would be inferiority. But humility in this case would be, okay, these are the situations in which I can work well. These situations I don't work very well. So whenever we get angry, or whenever we collapse, whenever we feel dejected, whenever any kind of unhealthy trait comes up, simply labeling it, this person is moody, or I am moody, I am inconsistent, I am irresponsible, I am short-tempered, I lack self-discipline. No, that kind of labels are not very helpful. Okay, there are some situations in which I can work, and there are some situations in which I can't work. There is nothing wrong in admitting that. So, or you can put it, we're using the word wrong over here. So I go wrong in some situations. So I was once recently we had this Pandav Nirjala Ekadashi. So I was once with one senior devotee, and it was around 9 o'clock. We were having a big question answer session. So both of us were answering questions. And then at that time, because it's a huge program, so those who were giving us this lemon water for breaking the fast. It was not Nirjala Ekadashi, Janmashtami. The fast breaking was at 12 o'clock. And a lot of crowds, so we were answering questions. So one devotee came, he said, Prabhu, we got lemon water for you for breaking the fast. He brought it around 8:39, because after the crowd would become too much. He says, where should I keep it? And the devotee next to me said, out of sight. Where should I keep it? Out of sight. He said, why out of sight? Because if it is right in front of you, the temptation will be there. And you already fasted for so long, let's complete the fast. So sometimes if we know that in particular situations we are vulnerable, then sometimes the best way to deal with provocation is to not deal with provocation. Now that doesn't mean we constantly avoid it. That is not possible. But sometimes, yes, it's that this is not the right time to discuss this. So if I understand I am wrong in some situations, if you understand the plane crashed because in this particular area the wind turbulence is so much, the plane's plane malfunctions. And then we learn something. And if we have to go in this area, maybe we have to take a different route, or we have to have better balance for the plane or whatever. We learn something. So for us, humility in personal growth means rather than thinking that I am perfect or I am worthless. Like, okay, I can function in some settings, in some situations, and in some situations I can't function. So, okay, let me function in this situation and grow, and gradually I might be able to increase my competence. So in this way, we will avoid being very harsh or judgmental with us. See, sometimes we just try to, when I prove that I've done nothing wrong, then we become very defensive. In this area, we either become defensive or aggressive with others. But that is when we admit no fault. But in the other extreme, when we go to the other extreme, did you change the volume? Okay. Okay. Was it not audible before clearly? Oh, okay. Thank you for. So was it because till now the entire class was not audible? Well, I need a purport to your laughter. Or was it that I started speaking softly? Something? Oh, okay. Actually, if I look down and speak, then at that time I think the audio may go off. Okay. So, here we may become aggressive toward ourselves. That means I start saying that, okay, I am worthless. I am good for nothing. I am useless. And this is not healthy. It's like inside us, we have got somebody who is constantly beating us. Then sometimes a little beating might jolt a person into activity. But constant beating will only injure and destroy the person. So if this is what we think is humility, to beat ourselves up. No, I'm not good enough. I'm useless. I lack this. I lack that. That is not humility. That is actually self-injury in the name of humility. So we don't want to attack others. We don't want to become too defensive on one side. At the same time, we don't want to beat ourselves up also. Okay, there are some areas in which I don't work. So to best deal with provocation. So provocation can be temptation. Provocation can be somebody speaking in a way that makes us fly into rage. To best deal with the provocation, don't deal with provocation. Now, it is not always in some situations. It applies sometimes. And acknowledging that is humility. So here when I'm saying curiosity is, like observe yourself. In what situations do I not work? So generally speaking, we'll find that, let's take an example of anger. So at this particular place, if I was here, and then there was an episode of rage. Now I could just say I'm short-tempered, or I could become curious. Now, we humans have this capacity to do self-observation. And that is why, if you consider, it is among all living beings, only we humans build a mirror. Isn't it? We build a mirror. Now, you don't see animals look, even if there's a reflection, they don't spend hours looking at the reflection in the mirror. So now a mirror, in one sense, can help us look at ourselves physically. How do I look? Now sometimes when say a peacock is in the mating season, the peacock's feathers blossom, it looks stunningly beautiful. But the peacock is not consciously, in one sense, creating its beauty. Nature just provides it that. When the hormones rise in the mating season, the wings, the feathers blossom. The feathers spread apart in a lavishly beautiful way. But we humans, we have this capacity for a self-observation. And with mirrors, we can look at ourselves physically. And that's helpful. Now, if Prabhupada would even say that dress before you address. If somebody is dressed in a very shabby way, and they try to speak a spiritual message, then the first impression will be negative. So we need to be aware. So Prabhupada would say dress, then address. Address means speak to others. This doesn't mean we have to wear expensive, gaudy kind of dress, but just be aware. Prabhupada said, be like perfect gentlemen and ladies. people, be respectable. So we have this capacity for self-observation at a physical level, but we also have, we could say, a mirror by which you can look at a mirror by which we can look at ourselves, not just at the body, but at the body, mind, and soul. And this mirror is the mirror of introspection. Intra is internal, and spect comes from spectacles, glasses, or spectacular, worth seeing. So introspection means inner seeing. So inner seeing means, say, if I am here right now, then it's almost as if we think about it, we can look at ourselves from a perspective of ourselves. Sometimes it happens literally when people have out-of-body experiences. But even if that doesn't happen, we can envision, okay, right now I'm sitting here and I'm giving this talk. But if I look at myself from above, conceptually I can raise myself and say, okay, what is going on? I'm speaking and maybe I'm speaking too long, or I'm speaking too fast. This introspection can be put another way as self-awareness. What am I doing? What am I feeling? What am I desiring? What am I thinking? We can observe ourselves. So this kind of self-observation, if we do it with curiosity, we can learn a lot about ourselves. In 6.5 in the Bhagavad Gita, this verse is translated in many different ways, or two many different ways. Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet. Atmaivaya atmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmanah. The Prabhupada translates it as elevate yourself with your mind, don't degrade yourself with your mind. Because the mind can be your friend and the mind can also be your enemy. Now, in this part, this translation is perfectly valid, because in the next verse, Krishna talks something similar, but then he uses the word mana. Bandhur atmat manastasya yenat maivat manah jitaha. So Krishna uses the word mana. But some previous acharyas also translate this verse as, in 6.5, Krishna is using the word only atma. He doesn't use the word mana over there. So we could translate this verse as elevate yourself with yourself. Don't degrade yourself with yourself. You can be your own friend and you can be your own enemy. Essentially what this verse is saying is, I am here, but I can also be here. That means this is like the self as observer and the self as observer. So this vision can be a vision of curiosity. That, okay, now sometimes it is very difficult to do this when we are acting. When we are doing some action, we are busy doing that action. But sometimes, maybe at the end of the day, we look back at our day, we are reviewing it, maybe we are journaling, we are just introspecting. Hey, at that time that person spoke that, maybe I should not have spoken like that. Maybe when this happened, I ate so much, maybe I could have eaten a little less. We can look back and instead of saying, oh, I ate so much, I have no self-control, I'm just a glutton. No, okay, what happened? At that time, I was talking with others, and while talking, I lost consciousness of how much I was eating. Or maybe, I was reading something, watching something, and while watching, again, I lost it. Or, we just try to look at ourselves and try to, rather than judge and condemn, we try to understand. Okay, what made me behave in that? And that way we can learn more about ourselves. So we can learn about how our mind works. Sometimes we say the mind tricks us. Yeah, it tricks us. But it also, while tricking also, it gives us some reasoning. That reasoning may be unreasonable. But still, it is a reason. It may be, you're very hungry, eat this more. Yeah, I'm hungry, But it is not that this is the only time I'm going to eat throughout my life. I'm going to eat again after a few hours. Maybe I don't have to eat so much right now. So if we try to understand how our mind works, what kind of thoughts come in our mind, what kind of desires come in our mind, what kind of moods come upon us, then that curiosity will help us to understand ourselves better and work with ourselves better. So ultimately, when Krishna uses this word, even if you consider that as referring to the mind, Krishna says, elevate yourself with your mind. Not elevate yourself without your mind. That means we can't reject our mind and elevate ourselves. Our mind is going to be here with us lifelong. Our mind is not replaceable. That's why sometimes, say, if we consider that when we want to grow, say, this is our higher self, this is, say, our soul, and this is our mind. That means our mind is driven by, say, our attachments, our cravings. Our soul is driven by some values. So now some people think that to grow spiritually means the soul goes here and the mind goes here. Soul is going up and the mind is going down. But if this is what is happening, that means basically there's a lot of inner tension. Like a rubber band is hugely pulled. You can pull it, you require a lot of strength for pulling it. But eventually either it is going to snap or it is going to snap back. So actually, this is not the way to grow. When people think that, okay, this is like I have a dark side within me. My mind is terrible, my mind is horrible, and I'll just bury the mind underground. Well, not really. We need the mind to function. The mind is going to be with us. So actual spiritual growth means that it is say, if my soul is here, my mind is here. Then the soul rises upward, the mind also rises up. That's why Krishna says at the end what should be happening is the mind becomes our friend. And that's why we need to understand how our mind works. Okay, my mind may be short-tempered, my mind may be lusty, my mind may be greedy, my mind may be jealous, whatever it is. We all have our weaknesses. But if we understand when we succumb to those weaknesses, then, okay, we tend to protect ourselves in those situations. When we find out the reasoning that our mind uses to push us into those actions, then we can challenge that reasoning. We can correct that reasoning. In that way, we can grow. So, rather than condemning ourselves, its humility means curiosity. So, what do I know about myself? I know that, again, I'll conclude with this point, that I said humility means to consider that what I don't know may be more important than what I know. So what I know about myself, I know that at least there's some part of me which wants to be a good person, which wants to be a good devotee. That's why I'm here. And also there is some part of me which seems to misbehave, which seems to act in ways that sometimes embarrass me, that mortify me, that hurt me, that hurt others. Okay, so what is that part? How does it act? How can I mold it to act better? So it's like, I was trying to keep this, I'll elaborate on this example in the next session, but we could say the soul has to be like a parent and the mind is like the child. So now parents have to discipline their children. But the only relationship is not just disciplining. If the child is not listening, then the parent should be listening. Not that listening means obeying the child, but okay, why does the child not want to do this? You cannot always be using the approach of brute force. So our mind is like a child and parents are curious. Okay, why is this my child is crying? Why is the child crying? Child is upset. Why is the child upset? If we have that approach, that it's not that the parents will be doing whatever the child wants them to do. But the parents are also not going to neglect whatever the child is doing. To work with the child. So like that, we want to elevate ourselves with our mind. In taking care of our children, not only our children grow, but we also grow. We understand the other person better. We develop more self-restraint. We grow. So this parent-child metaphor, I'll elaborate on in a future session. But the idea is we want to understand ourselves. Means we know ourselves theoretically as the soul, but we also want to understand ourselves in terms of our mind, in terms of our body. Okay, what is my capacity? What is my limitation? How can I function better? So when we understand ourselves in this way, then this humility in what I know about myself, this is humility applied internally. So what I know about myself, and there is what I don't know about myself. So instead of simply labeling what I don't know about myself, oh, I'm a short-tempered person. No, there is a demon inside me. Okay, maybe. But then how do I deal with that? What do I do about it? So what we do is, we approach this with curiosity. And then gradually what will happen is, more and more from here, things will come here. What I know about myself will become greater. When I know what I know about myself becomes greater, then I can become a better instrument in Krishna's service. Okay, these are my abilities, these are my limitations. Let me serve Krishna better by awareness of this. So here, humility helps us to develop greater self-awareness. And self-awareness is vital for self-transformation. So I'll summarize what we discussed. Started first by talking about the key definition, which is that the opposite of ego is not just humility, it is insecurity. And between the two is humility. I'm everything and I can do everything, or I'm nothing and I can do nothing. These are Mayavad and Shunyavad. Whereas I am something and I can do something. This is humility. I talked about it as that ego and insecurity both are two sides of the same coin of self-centeredness, self-obsession. So we want to avoid both those coins. We value something bigger than ourselves. Humility is not about devaluing ourselves. And then I talked about humility in terms of self-understanding and humility in terms of self-transformation. In terms of self-understanding, we're going to discuss humility in 4 dimensions. So the first dimension was humility in terms of personal growth. So self-understanding means that I look at what I know and what I don't know. So humility means to consider things I don't know, not that they're more powerful, but they may be more important than what I know. In this sense, humility is curiosity. So this kind of curiosity will help us avoid just being either defensive or aggressive, giving unhelpful labels. The plane crashed because of gravity. I flew into rage because I'm short-tempered. So that doesn't help us to learn much. So what I don't know, that will help us, this attitude of curiosity, this will help us to actually understand ourselves better. When we understand ourselves better, then, okay, in particular situations, I get provoked. So instead of being, again, always, like if we consider when dealing with others, being aggressive, defensive towards others, I didn't do anything wrong, you only did wrong. Or We can be aggressive to others, or we can be aggressive to ourselves, where we simply beat ourselves. In between, what we have is we are introspective. I discussed how we humans have the capacity to look at ourselves. And when we look at ourselves, we learn by that. Just like mirrors are there for looking at ourselves physically, but introspection helps us look at ourselves internally, understand our emotions. When I talk about self-transformation, we want to transform ourselves. Then what is required is, self-transformation is not that the soul is here, the mind is here, and the soul goes up and the mind stays down. This is not the way to soul transformation. It is the soul and the mind both go up. That means we need to understand our soul, understand our mind, and take both of them up. So, these are the situations. The best way to deal with provocation is sometimes don't deal with provocation. So if you understand this is the way my mind works, then we can elevate ourselves better. We don't want to create an inner tension within ourselves. We want to elevate our complete being. The soul can be like the parent, the mind is like the child, and both grow to a healthy working relationship. So by having humility, we understand, okay, this is what I know about myself, and this is what I don't know. Let me learn about myself. We look at ourselves as if we're the third person. And by that, we observe and learn about ourselves. So, in the next session, we'll take this theme further about how a healthy relationship with ourselves can help us have healthy relationship with various areas of life. In areas of dealing with others, dealing with problems that we face in our life, and dealing with in our relationship with the Lord also. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions? Yes, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Introspection and self-awareness is so essential. But you see someone who don't have that, okay? No introspection, no self-awareness. But going between that pendulum of ego and self-obsession leading to insecurity, causing problem for themselves constantly and to others as well. How do you help such a person?
Okay, so if somebody has no capacity for introspection or self-awareness, then how can we help them? Well, my understanding is that it's not a digital logic. It's not that somebody is self-aware and somebody is not self-aware. Not two distinct states. Generally, it's not so much like this as it is more like a gradation. It's more like, you can say, low self-awareness at the bottom. And it's a continuum where at the top you have high self-awareness. So when we consider from that perspective, that it's a more analog rather than digital. So even a person who seems to have no self-awareness, they will have some self-awareness about some things in their life. That means, say somebody might be very insensitive in the way they speak with others. They don't intend to hurt others, but their mannerism, their word choices, their expressions, they're such that they end up hurting others. They say, this is just the way I am, they may say. And yeah, maybe it is true to some extent, but it is not the complete truth. I was at one place and then I was doing some seminar on relationships. So one couple came to meet me and the Mataji was looking a little apprehensive, the Prabhu was looking a little sheepish. And he said that, I have anger issues. Just, when I get provoked, I just can't control myself. The Mata is saying, I feel afraid of him. He normally is a nice person, but when he gets angry, he's changed completely. I feel scared of him. I feel ashamed that the Prabhu was saying, I don't want her to feel like that. I don't want to make her feel like that. I just can't control myself. I said, really, you can't control yourself? No, I just can't. Okay, do you get angry with your boss? Yeah. Do you yell at your boss? Do you wave your fist at your boss? Obviously not. If I do that, I'll have no job next day. So what this means is that you have the capacity to control your anger. The point is that for you, losing the job is something which is non-negotiable. And as compared to the non-negotiable aspect, non-negotiability of your job, your emotion of anger there becomes negotiable. But at home, okay, even if I yell, what are they going to do? They'll get a little upset, they'll be a little temper tantrum, whatever. So for you, what has happened is that the family is not that non-negotiable. So everybody has something non-negotiable about which, in front of which, they will become aware of everything else. So we have to find out what is non-negotiable for that person. Or we help them to find that. Once everybody gets angry. But no matter, most of us, no matter how angry we get, we might yell at someone, but everybody has their boundaries. No matter how angry I get, I'm not going to use swear words. Or no matter I get angry, I'm not going to take a knife and attack someone. No, some people who have no boundaries, they might take a machine gun and go in a school and shoot people. So people have boundaries. It's just that, what are their boundaries? Different people may have, for those people, kids may say they have no boundaries. Well, maybe in this area they don't have any boundaries. But everybody has some boundaries. So one part of introspection is just finding out what is non-negotiable for us. And then linking the other things that are important for us with that. So for example, if I am angry with someone, and I just feel I can't deal with this person, I can't tolerate this person. And when something similar happened once with my spiritual master, so one of my god brothers had told him that, I can't deal with this person. I can't serve this person. So Maharaj told me, you are not serving him. You are serving me with him. So don't think of your relationship with him. Think of your relationship with him. I can't tolerate this person. I just feel irritated by this person. But if my focus is, I don't want to displease my spiritual master, that is non-negotiable. And for the sake of my spiritual master, I can deal with this. So all of us, in one sense, introspection is not only just what happened and why did I do this and why did I do that. A key aspect of introspection is finding out what is non-negotiable for us. And to the extent we can find that. Now, can there be some people for whom nothing is non-negotiable? Well, maybe, but it's unlikely. We all have boundaries. And then if you can link, this action if I do, that will take me across that. I don't want to do that. In the Mahabharata, in the Ramayana, after Bharata and Shatrughna come back, they are shocked, they are enraged, they are devastated by what has happened. And then Shatrughna, after Dashrath Maharaj last rites are performed, Shatrughna is coming back towards his palace, and then he sees Manthara coming out. And Manthara is dressed in regal opulence. Now Kaikeyi has rewarded her profusely. And seeing her in such opulence, Shatrughna explodes. He runs towards her and catches her and starts shaking her violently. And Shatrughna, and seeing this, Manthara cries for help, and Kaikeyi comes running out. And Kaikai says to Shatrugna, stop! Shatrugna is so angry, he doesn't even pay any attention to her. At that time, seeing the commotion, Bharat comes over there. And Kaikai runs towards Bharat, and she says, Bharat, get your brother to stop. And Bharat doesn't even look at Kaikai. Completely cold voice, he says to Shatrugna, he says, oh Shatrugna, what you are doing right now, I have felt the urge to do that also. And not just with my own mother. Kaikai shocked to hear this. But he says, if Ram comes to know that we hurt them in any way, he will never forgive us. He will be upset because we want Ram to come back. Or let her go. As soon as Shatrugna hears this, so his anger is valid. What they have done is terrible. But more than my anger for Shatrugna and Bharat, more than their anger with Kaikai and Manthara is their devotion to Ram. The devotion to Ram is non-negotiable. And that is what enables them to let go of the anger. So introspection has various aspects to it. But the key aspect is finding what is non-negotiable. Or if somebody says they have no boundaries, then we have to help them, okay, at least make this non-negotiable. If somebody is going away from devotee association and they don't have any support, okay, maybe chanting around is non-negotiable. Reading something is what is non-negotiable? What do you feel is your connection with Krishna? Keep that non-negotiable. That's how they will move forward. So then that is how self-awareness will develop for them. Does that answer the question? Any other questions?
Very enlivening discussion. I felt like it's something that I've contemplated a lot myself. When going through chaplaincy training, one of the models that we were introduced to is called Johari's window. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it talks about a window or 4 quadrants. There's some things that we are aware of and others are also aware of. There's some things that we are aware of and others are not aware of. There's some things that others are aware of and we are not aware of about ourselves. And there's some things that neither others nor we are aware of. And I was thinking about how part of humility, in addition to curiosity, is courage, where we need the ability to inquire by self-introspection, but perhaps from others, into those deeper layers of ourselves that we may not be so privy to, that they can hold up a mirror for us. And it ties into your next, I assume it'll tie into your next part, which is this humility in relationships, to have maturity or courage in relationships, to ask people, hold up a mirror for me, I'd like to see what's there. So any comments on this?
Yeah, you stole the point from my next session. I'm happy to be robbed. Yeah, I think it's very important that we have at least 1 or 2 relationships where when you say guhyam akhyati pruchyati, that is not just esoteric topics about Krishna that are discussed by devotees. It is also that there are some, we all have our insecurities, our vulnerabilities, and we live in a tough world. We can't go about showing our vulnerabilities to everyone. Otherwise, the world can exploit our seeing them as weakness, and the world can exploit us. At the same time, we need some people with whom we can be vulnerable. And then they tell us, this is where something is wrong, this is how you can fix it, you can discuss. So yes, it's very important to have at least some people. So we could say that things we know about ourselves, but or other things we don't know about ourselves. So these two quadrants, if we consider what we know, and especially with this quadrant, we consider that this is what is close relationships. Guhyam akhyati pichyati can help us develop that. So if I'm here, my mind is here, and then I look at everyone through the mirror, through the window of my mind. So if somebody criticizes me, and when I'm looking at that person through my mind, what happens is it just doesn't reach me, it just bounces back. If somebody criticizes me, this person is jealous of me. This person is my ill wisher. It could be, but it doesn't have to be that. So now it's very difficult in general to take criticism. And that's just human nature. We can't say that it's ego, it's just human nature. But if there are some people who are close to us, in their case, what happens? The mind is here and this person is here. Okay, my mind is telling me things are like this, but this person is telling me like this. So what happens? We don't look at that person through our mind. We look at that person and then we look at the mind. And then that person says, okay, this is not the way you should have acted. Or this is where you are deficient. No, I'm not deficient. I'm good. Oh, maybe I'm not. In one sense, we need at least one or two people who are that close to us, with whom we can be vulnerable. So this requires us to be vulnerable. This is the state of being vulnerable. This is the state where we are very defensive. In one sense, our mind's conceptions are like our defense. We don't want anything to intrude into our way of looking at the world. So it is nice to have cordial relationships with many devotees, like polite relationship with many devotees, or all devotees if possible. But this close relationship we need with someone, and that requires investment of time, it requires investment of energy. Then it can be hugely helpful if we have something like that. Answer your question? Okay. So last question, then we can continue in the next session. Is that okay, Mataji? Yeah, we'll finish by 1:30.
I actually have a couple of questions, Prabhu.
Okay.
So you were speaking of humility in the form of curiosity for our personal growth. And while curiosity is a quality that really helps us grow and stretch, I'm also thinking that there have to be some limits within which curiosity that is driven by true, healthy humility has to operate. Because, we hear Prabhupada saying, don't go out on a limb or don't flirt with Maya. Right? So I'm wondering if you would be willing to comment on how true humility tempers our curiosity so that we stay within healthy boundaries that help us grow rather than take us down.
Okay, good point. So, curiosity means to be curious about the Atma, not curious about the Maya. Isn't it? It's not that. The temptations which we have not explored, which we don't encounter, it's not that we have to be curious about those temptations. It's not that, okay, I never drunk, let me drink. I never done drugs, let me do drugs. No, when Prabhupada was asked that, Prabhupada said, Prabhupada asked, how can you speak about drugs when you have never taken drugs? Prabhupada said, my students have taken. And the drugs takes you high, but it brings you crashing down afterwards. Krishna consciousness can take you high and keep you high forever. So, in one sense, our curiosity is about the issues that are of concern to us. And of course, in general, we have the values that are guiding our life. And we want to we are curious about how we can better align ourselves with those values. And in that connection, we explore. Okay, in this particular situation, say for example, I want to fast. So maybe I find that an Ekadashi, if I decide to fast, if I decide to chant and fast, and maybe that is more difficult. If I decide to maybe come to temple and do some service, and I find that in the service I'm doing this, I get busy chanting, my mind stays empty. For somebody else, it might be different. If I chant, I get exhausted. But if I study scriptures, I hear some classes, I feel energized. I don't know. So it is, curiosity is always purpose-centered. It's not just a random curiosity. Prabhupada, when he was in America, he was curious about the functional aspects of America. Prabhupada did not think that I have to do a PhD in American history to understand the American mind. No, so we said curiosity, it has to be purpose-driven. What is my purpose over here? So, if there is no purpose, then there is so much to know in this world. We can say Wikipedia is filled with so much interesting and irrelevant information. Now, somebody may have some interest in that, and that's fine. But how is it relevant for you? It may not be very relevant for you. So we want to focus on what is relevant. It's a purpose driven. So the provocations that I face, how do I deal with them? The situations that I encounter, how do I deal with them? So in that sense, to put it another way, things I know, things I don't know. We talk about these two categories. But even when we're talking about these two categories, we can say all of this has to be in one bigger circle. That circle, we can say, is things that matter to me. So there could be many things that I don't know, but they don't really matter to me right now. If they don't matter to me, then curiosity about that may not be of much value for me. Does that answer your question?
And my second question is, you were speaking about effective education, and effective education is where the teacher is able to determine what is relevant or where the students are at,
Yeah.
and then build a bridge. Now, the kind of format we have in our culture of classes, like for instance, you don't know us. However, I find you do a masterful job of education in your classes. And this is not a new tradition, right? Even the sages of Naimisharanya, they're sitting, there's so many of them. So it's not that each one's level or where they're at was known. Could you comment on, how in our style of giving classes and education within ISKCON, it is possible to build these kind of bridges when, in some ways, I would say even, there's a little bit of impersonality in the sense that you don't know who's sitting, where they're at.
That is true. That's why there are multiple kinds of classes. When there are some classes are primarily educational, they can be didactic. If you're studying Bhakti Shastri, for example, then at that time, it's mostly philosophy, the application of philosophy, but it's like more or less, we're talking about universal principles, universal practices. But suppose somebody is talking about Vaishnava etiquette. Then, now while again the principles of etiquette are universal, but the specific actions may vary. So there always has to be some boundaries between how, say, male, females interact. But how males, females interact in a village in India will be different from how they interact in a city in India, and will be different from how they interact in a city in America. And so there are some aspects of etiquette will be different. That's why, depending on what we are talking about, there has to be a greater or lesser connect with the audience required. And the aspects which are more practical, more directly connect with people's lives, it is important that the speakers know about the audience a little bit more. Or those who know the audience also speak about it. So, and in general, if we don't just talk, we don't just don't talk, when we talk about talking, there can be three ways of talking. We are talking at people. We are talking to people. And we are talking with people. So at is the worst, you can say. It's almost like we treat our words to be like verbal missiles which are supposed to knock down people, isn't it? So talking to people is you could say better, but talking with people is the best. Okay, so now sometimes there may not be not all classes can be interactive. We try to make the classes interactive as much as possible, but a certain amount of if a teaching has to happen, certain amount of connection has to, certain amount of substantial speaking has to be done by the speaker. Interactive classes could be good, but it depends on different speakers. One time I attended a seminar, and after that the speaker said, my seminar was successful because I didn't speak more than 30% in the seminar. That's why I was so bored. I didn't learn much from that. If something is very practical, it's fine. But the key is, even if there's not much interaction, at least there's mutual observation. That's why Zoom is a little difficult if you're having concepts. You don't see the audience. Sometimes if I'm giving a class and it's a live audience, then at least I can see that if people are looking at me as if they're watching a foreign language movie without subtitles, then maybe I had to clarify something, I had to elaborate something, I had to modify something. So at least there has to be that mutual observation and interaction in that degree. Then there can be better communication, better education. Thank you for those thoughtful questions. Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Gaur Premanande.